Hi, friends. This is a little update right now. I wanted to speak. Well, actually, I was just speaking with my dear sister in Guadalajara, Tracy Barnett, and she had inspired me to do this little astrology update because just let me tell you, I have had such a hard time writing about this, about what's happening astrologically. And part of it is that for me personally, it's so easy to go into my mind and to just overthink things. I have a newsletter I've put out for 15 years, and people that I love, a good number of people on that list that I like to speak to and I like to connect with. But boy, lately, this whole left brain trying to explain things, going into linear space and time and overthinking things has been so not fun because what's happening right now is so not about trying to categorize and I just can't even find words in so many ways. But Tracy, in any case, my dear sister in Guadalajara, we were just talking, and tonight is a very special night astrologically. And the reason for that is because Venus is at her highest and brightest point in the sky. So if you have dark skies right now, and if you have clear skies right now, go outside and look up, and she is brilliant and beautiful. And it is really, in terms of the sky story right now, we need some beautiful bright spots because what we knew as astrologers, and we're trying to speak to people about really, is that 2020 we had already we all knew, astrologers or not, we all sensed it in our bones. 2020 was a big year and that it was going to ask a lot of us. And I had spoken a great deal about a vision that I'd had at the beginning of the year that was where we each kind of took our staff of power and we claimed that. And we just really, each of us claimed our own personal power on one level that was really, in this vision, felt very visceral. And we're in that moment now where we are many of us are beginning to find our footing. Moment to moment, we might be finding our footing and then falling down again, which is very natural. Um, but tonight I just want to speak to this beautiful bright light in the sky. I want to talk about Venus. I've had a love affair with Venus now for years, since 2010, when I first started really doing a lot of potent magic and alchemy with her. And many of you who are going to be listening now, I'm sure, also have a beautiful relationship with her. But Venus is up high at her brightest and at her highest, at maximum elongation. What I love to think about with her right now is that I'm so glad, Violet, that you thought about that. I'm sure you have that internally, that staff of power, because you are such a flame of power in our community right now. I'm just so glad you're on. But Venus, I'm in a place right now where it's very cloudy, so I can't see Venus up in the sky. Some of you, let me know if you're in a part of the world now where it's clear, where you have a dark, clear sky, if you can see her. Tracy, maybe you can post that picture that you posted from the rooftop up in Guadalajara, Mexico. One of the things I love about astrology is that when we're talking about the sun or the moon, it connects us across the globe. Much like this pandemic that we're experiencing right now, we're being reminded in such a poignant way that we are all connected. And I was a little bit sad because I can't see Venus. And Venus, of course, is one of my greatest teachers. And yet, my sister, when I just spoke with her, she's on a rooftop in Guadalajara, Mexico. She took a photo and it's beautiful. And so I felt like I got to connect with her. And then I was just messaging my friend Jenny Hipsher in Brooklyn, and she was just telling me about what's happening there and what's happening in New York for her. And so I'm hoping that she also can see Venus, and Faye can see Venus. And Faye, where are you again? I can't remember where Faye is, but anybody who can see her, let me know because, I really, when we see the full moon, when we see the crescent moon, when we're able to see the sunrise at the winter solstice, which would be the summer solstice at the other side of the globe, these are some times and moments where we know we're connected. These are these beautiful bright lights in the sky where even though there's so much light pollution, we still can see these beautiful bright lights. They connect us to the celestial mysteries. which I really deeply believe that there is something sacred about spending time under the night sky. There's something that helps us remember our true size. I also really do think that you can communicate with the sun, the moon, the stars, they are our relatives, that we can have an intimate relationship with them, because that's been my experience and the experience of multitudes of people right now that are waking up to one of the first sacred languages, the first sacred alphabet of the zodiac, and the one of the most potent, deep, and universal ways that we can understand our we can understand that we live in a universe of magic, of mystery, of beauty, is by looking up into the night sky and letting ourselves just really perceive of that. So tonight, again, I was speaking with a friend I was connecting with a friend in New York City just a moment ago, and really hearing her tell the story. She has friends who are sick right now, and she's feeling the immensity of it. And what she wrote to me, though, was she said, I have so many resources, inner and outer, and, a lot of people don't. And, I just was imagining my dear friend up there, and she had spent a great deal of time in this very sweet, close-knit community here in Columbia, Missouri, and she's now has her own community as well up in New York City. So feeling her, imagining Venus shining above her in that sky, imagining Venus shining in the skies, all across the globe right now, connecting us. So I just wanted to start with that, but I will talk about the astrology right now beyond Venus. Well, first of all, Venus is, to me, this is the most essential thing. Venus is in a larger cycle right now, which began November 1st of 2018. It's a 1.5-year cycle. And just understand, tracking the Venus cycle is it's a very powerful practice that was so essential and so important, and that so deeply reflected the larger currents of any given time, that the Mayan calendar that was so important for 2012, for example, was really largely based on, or very deeply informed by, the cycles of Venus. Venus is the third brightest celestial object in the sky. And in any case, so Venus is currently in this cycle that began in the fall of 2018. This cycle is 19 months, it's 584 days, as every Venus cycle is, and it completes in June 9th of this year. And this cycle is a repeating cycle that is basically, we refer to it as the Libra Venus cycle. And one of the things to understand about it is the larger theme of what's been unfolding since fall of 2018, an undercurrent beneath everything else that's been happening, is that we as a collective have been doing the deeper work to ask what happened in our human culture that caused us to be so separated from each other. What happened in our modern human culture to cause us to be so deeply fragmented from the coherence inside of ourselves? What happened in our human culture to disconnect us from the alive, sentient, conscious universe and all of our relatives that are non-human, the relatives of our star nations, the relatives of the trees and of the plants and all the other living things? And so that's been the big question in this Venus cycle. When Venus rose as morning star in early November, beginning that cycle, she rose in the sign of Libra. And the sign of Libra has everything to do with the primal bond that connects all things, all living things, heart to heart, in an intimate dance, in an intimate relationship. So when Venus begins a cycle in a particular sign, it's the goddess or the feminine principle around that sign that's doing the deep work within each one of us, within and without. So since that time, the beginning of that cycle, the morning star cycle, which lasted from November of 2018 until July, the middle of July, was the period where, in the stories of the great goddess Inanna, which is a story happening in the Venus cycle, the morning star journey is the period where she is letting go. She's doing this sacred strip tease to release every aspect of her personality, of her, um, she's doing this what she has to do to go to the underworld in her descent is to remove her crown, her earrings, her robes, all of her sacred adornments, all of those items that make her who she thinks that she truly is. So in this morning star journey, which is the morning star Venus journey, is about letting go. It's about stripping down. It's about relinquishing whatever is not essential on our life journey. If that sounds and feels familiar at this time, I've heard so many times in the last week or two where people are saying, if you don't know what's important now, then, it's just, this is the time to kind of get real and recognize that our priorities a couple of months ago might seem kind of strange now. In any case, so in this Venus cycle, the morning star Venus cycle from November 2018 until July of 2019 last year, we were collectively letting go and seeing whatever needed to be let go in the realm of our deepest, closest partnerships, our deepest, closest bonds. From July 12th through late September, and ask yourself what was happening in that time in your own life. That was the period where we did an even deeper letting go of whatever it was that stood in the way of a full, connected, heart-centered relationship with ourselves, with coherence within our own inner council. And we had to really face into the places where our personal relationships were out of balance. And for some of us, we also made connections with new relationships where we felt a really deep, strong heart bond. And we also began to recognize the places in ourselves where we had lost sight of who we truly were. And so then, beginning in late September of this last year until June of 2020, this has been the time where we are here to be doing the work of restoring our connectedness with each other and with our coherent hearts and with the world around us. And so when I look at what's happening right now, when I see Venus in the night sky, and I consider it all of the other astrological stories that are happening right now that have to do with the most fundamental death and rebirth of our human culture, the most fundamental death and rebirth of the underpinnings of modern society. To me, it feels like this undercurrent that we can see, feel, and know with Venus is that it truly is that she's embodying in this moment the goddess of love. She is embodying this beautiful evening star and goddess of love at her highest and her brightest, reminding us that what is essential in this moment is to do that deeper work to ask first within ourselves and within our relationship with our own selves, where is it that I have been at war with myself? Where is it that I have had these stories about who I am versus who I'm supposed to be, where I've diminished myself, where I've rejected myself, where I've punished myself in such a way that I've forgotten how it feels to be in a good conversation with my own heart. Now is the time, Venus would say to us, for the peacemaking. Now is the time for deep peacemaking. And this is why Mama Earth just put us on a big time out. Because whatever it is that's happening inside of our hearts, if we're unsettled, if we're at war with ourselves, if we're continually neglecting to listen to the deeper callings of our soul, if we're continually getting hijacked by distractions around the things that really don't matter, we're going to suffer internally for that. And when we're unsettled and when we're at war with ourselves, then that's the energy that we bring into the earth around us. And I say this as a person who has done tremendous battle internally every day of my life. And it happens here, it really happens right up here all the time. My mind is a great torturer and I work with it a lot, but it really truly is. And so when we haven't brought together that inner council within us And when we haven't done the peacemaking inside of ourselves, then the energy we bring to Gaia, to the earth, to our children, to our elders, to our friends, is that energy of discord. And this is not a judgment. It's simply saying, we need this time out. We need it. We need it so we can meet ourselves more deeply than we've ever met ourselves before. And Venus, evening star, the wise goddess who has gone through her death and rebirth initiation, is blessing us, is supporting us, and coming home to a deeper sense of peacemaking. And this is really what the Libra Venus cycle is about, is peacemaking. And we can't make peace until we acknowledge the places where we've been at war with ourselves. And this is what I keep seeing and feeling and thinking when I look at the world around us, is that there are so many ways each one of us are really asked to diminish ourselves and the sacredness and the dignity of ourselves. For example, by focusing so much on money rather than on our sacred purpose. And it's very subtle the way that happens. And it's not to say that there's anything wrong with money per se. It's simply that this fear that we have of not having enough often puts us into a place where we're not necessarily making choices from a place of love and service, but really more wanting to make sure our basic needs are met. And this, again, is not a judgment. It's just that it's for us to remember, especially at a time like now, where all of our fight or flight is, our instincts are just on high alert. I would just invite any and all of you, especially those of you who are entrepreneurs or healers, to just remember, we need to remember how many times we've been taken care of before. How many times when we just thought that we weren't going to have what we needed, we had what we needed. And to live from that place of knowing our needs are met. And so that we can begin to ask the deeper questions around our lives. And for some of us, I just want to say, some people say the most important thing right now is to remember how much you love the most essential people in your lives. Keep in touch with who's close to you. And I would say that is the next layer, is that, is to make sure that we're caring for each other, and to make sure that we are, really nurturing our closest bonds. And yet I want to speak to something as well that is not a popular thing to talk about, which is that as important as our human relationships are, our relationships with other human beings are extremely important, and those are not the only things that matter. Other things that matter are our relationship with spirit, meaning, do we actively cultivate a strong sense with source? Do we do whatever it takes to be sure that we have access to this deep ground of being? However we do that, whatever our religious affiliation or spirituality, do we know how to really be with ourselves? Do we know how to go more deeply within? Do we know how to reflect? Do we know how to take time to create sacred space so that we can really honor the beauty of this life that we get to live? Do we take time for our inner temple, for the consciousness that we carry into the world? Those things are all relationships as well. And what about our relationship with the more than human world? What about our relationship with Gaia? That's actually really important. What about our relationship to the spirits of the land around us, embodied in the trees and the plants and the animals and the birds and just the living earth itself, the landscape that's near us? Do we have an intimate relationship with those things? Those things are important too. In a moment like now, I actually think it's a mistake, as poignant as it is. If I have a sick friend or a sick dear one right now, I don't mean to diminish how essential it is for us to care for each other, but my belief is that the reason that we've co-created the situation that we're currently in is because we've pretended like it's just us here. And it's not just us here. I deeply believe human beings are actually needed for the creation. I mean, I feel like the earth would miss us. I think the earth would miss us terribly because we actually are an extension of our consciousness. And I think we have a deeply sacred role to play. And we certainly haven't fully stepped into that yet. And I think it's an ecstatic role. And more and more and more people are waking up to that. But my sense is that it can be so easy to get overwhelmed now because our minds have been bent and blown open so many times by becoming global citizens and being able to watch the news and knowing what's happening in every corner of the earth. And so all of these stories about what's happening to humans, and I think it's really good to have a prayer practice so that we can, maybe you have a little bowl where you put names of people that you love in that bowl, and then every morning you pray, or if you have Reiki that you can give to it, or just put your hands over it and send it light, or ask divine to, just grace those people and keep them safe. It might be that you draw little pictures of all the different countries of the globe, or even just a picture of Mother Earth, and just put that in your little bowl, as well as those names. And then just every morning you bless that, and you give light to it, and you give love to it, and you nourish it and feed it with your songs and your prayers. Do those things and care for the people around you and care for the communities around you. Especially don't forget the ones who have the least, because those individuals right now are having the hardest time. If we think it's hard, those of us who have a computer that can even see this, think about all the people who have so very little, and they're going to be even more vulnerable right now. So yes, think about the people. But I also want to say that if your feeling is to feel panicked and to feel concerned and worried because you feel like you want to take care of every human all at once, that's such a natural thing to feel right now. And I think it's an undercurrent that we need to have compassion for, and that we don't want the vibration around that to be so much overwhelm that we check out. Because the truth is that we are these limitless spirits, but we are in finite bodies. And part of the heartbreak is that we can only do what we can do. And so again, have practices of prayer where you can really connect heart to heart to the earth and to the people and to the animals and the plants and to all the beings that you care about and that you're connected to. And then also let it go. Take time to let it go so that you can also be deeply with yourself. Be deeply with yourself. Give yourself that gift. Give yourself the gift of some profound, deep reflection, because we've been put on pause. And if the whole time you've been on pause, and this is your time to really be shaken to the core so you can ask, what is fundamentally essential to me? Then you don't take that time worrying, I should do more for people, I should be out there, if that's not what your soul calls you to do right now. If your soul calls you to do that right now, do that. But I think in our culture sometimes we don't necessarily value and honor the very humble, quiet work of meeting ourselves more deeply and asking ourselves earnest questions about what really deeply matters to us. And when sometimes that has to do with more than just our human relationships, but it also has to do with our relationship to spirit. It has to do with our relationship with our own selves. It has to do with our relationship with the earth. So Venus shining there as this beautiful beacon is helping us remember how to come into right relationship. She's helping us to become a peacemaker. And the place we begin that is really inside of ourselves. So give yourself a break and let yourself know that part of what self-care is about, it's not just about you know, baths, although I love baths personally, and I think we should do as many as possible if we have a bathtub, hopefully. It's not just about pampering ourselves in those ways. It's really also about doing this deeper inquiry, doing whatever it takes to try to find those little precious moments and spaces of solitude and silence to go deep and go and really just listen to the call of our souls and of our hearts. It's really time for each one of us to go to the depths. And when we're personally willing to go to the depths, then we can extend a hand to the sister, to the brother next to us when they're needing to go to their depths, and we can stand with them. So it's important, I think, in moments like this where there's a lot of groupthink, because we need that. You know, we need that unity consciousness. It can be really easy to get so swept up in it that we forget to take a breath and to return to our own bodies and return to our own moments and just really sense, feel, and know ourselves and the sovereignty of who we are, and to meet the world from that place of strength. So those are some of the things. There's so much more I could ask, but those just feel. I think I'm going to leave it there because it's long. But I just want to send love to each one of you out there and just say that truly this can be a moment of beauty. This can be a moment of where we meet ourselves more deeply than we have met ourselves for a long time. So yes, it's about our relationships with other people, but it's also about deepening our relationships with ourselves. So I'm just sending so much love to all of you. Please, if you can, spend time with Venus under the night sky. She is a beauty. She will remind you of more timeless things. And also remind you that we are all connected by the magic and the beauty of being able to live on this amazing universe, on this beautiful earth, in this sacred moment in time. So much love.